Have you ever really minded asking what the mind actually is? Not how it works, not what it does, but what it is. We often lump three words together: brain, mind, and consciousness. But each describes a different layer of who we are. The brain is structure, about 1.3 kilograms of tissue, neurons, chemicals, and electrical impulses. You can scan it, dissect it, measure its activity. The mind is what the brain does. It's not a place, it's a process. Thinking, remembering, imagining, deciding. It's the software running on the brain's hardware. And then there's consciousness, something else entirely. Not what the system does, but what it feels like to be the system. It's the raw sense of being aware. The mind sits between brain and consciousness. It's the layer where experience is organized, where patterns form, where the world is modeled and made usable. From an evolutionary perspective, minds didn't evolve to solve equations or write poetry. They evolved to help organisms survive. A mind lets you simulate the world internally, before acting on it. It lets you imagine, plan, hesitate, learn. It replaces blind reflex with informed decision, and that gave certain organisms, like us, a massive advantage. But the mind didn't stop at survival. It became a space for memory, language, reflection, creativity. It became where we carry not just the world, but ourselves. Still, we don't experience reality directly. We experience it through the mind's model of it, filtered by attention, shaped by emotion, colored by memory. Every mind builds its own version of the world and lives inside it, and yet the mind is never static. It changes with experience, learns, rewires, reinterprets. The mind you had a year ago is not the same one you have now. So what is the mind? It's not your thoughts, not your memories, not your identity. It's the system that holds them all together long enough for you to say, me. You can't see it, but everything you see through it. Understanding what the mind is isn't just the start of this journey. It shapes how we understand everything that follows. Where does mind come from? It's one thing to ask what the mind is. It's another to ask how it came to exist at all. The earliest forms of life had no thoughts, no memories, just chemical reactions and simple reflexes. A jellyfish pulses through the water without a brain. A worm withdraws from light without needing to know what light is. But eventually, reactivity wasn't enough. Survival started favoring something more: anticipation, moving toward food before sensing it, avoiding danger before feeling pain. This shift from reaction to prediction is where the foundations of the mind began. Nervous systems evolved to process more complex information. Neurons clustered into networks. Simple light-detecting cells became image-forming eyes. Reflex turned into response. Response became strategy. Minds didn't cause brains. They arose when brains grew complex enough to model the world internally and choose action over reflex. With time, organisms gained more than sensation. They built internal maps of threats, opportunities, outcomes. The world became something to think through, not just react to. Thought replaced trial and error. Awareness emerged, not all at once, but in stages, from raw perception to memory, from simple learning to imagination, from experience to self-awareness. The mind wasn't built in a moment. It accumulated, layer by layer, from sensation to perception, from memory to imagination, from instinct to identity. And with each leap, nature selected for minds that offered an advantage. So, Where does the mind come from? It didn't begin with a spark, it began with complexity, and every new function, prediction, memory, simulation, moved it one step closer to what we now recognize as the inner world. What was the need for a mind? Imagine a world without minds. Organisms react. They move toward light, away from heat. They eat. They reproduce. But every move is immediate. Every danger must be faced directly. Every mistake is paid for in full. Without a mind, there is no second guessing, no rehearsal, no imagining a better move before committing to action. And as the environment grew more complex, more predators, more competition, less predictable food, this simple strategy became increasingly dangerous. Minds became necessary because reflex alone couldn't handle uncertainty. A mind solves a fundamental problem. How do you act in a world where not every danger can be seen and not every opportunity can be sensed? Without a mind, organisms must trial and error their way through survival. With a mind, organisms can predict, simulate, and avoid fatal mistakes without having to suffer them first. A mind allows mental modeling, imagining an outcome before it happens, evaluating choices without physically testing each one, storing knowledge and applying it to new, unseen situations. This is not a bonus feature. It is a survival mechanism. In complex environments, flexibility beats reflex. Adaptation within a single lifetime becomes more important than rigid behaviors inherited across generations. The mind gives an organism an internal testing ground, a way to run experiments on possible futures before risking real-world consequences. It also makes long-term strategy possible. Minds can delay gratification, track investments, maintain social bonds, and recognize deception. All abilities that require holding multiple possibilities in mind, not just reacting to the present moment. In social animals, the need becomes even sharper. Minds must model other minds, understanding not just the environment, but the intentions, beliefs, and future actions of others. In groups, a mind is not a luxury, it's an arms race. Without a mind, existence is immediate and narrow. With a mind, existence expands, forward and backward in time, outward into networks of others, inward into self-reflection. So what was the need for a mind? The need was for survival beyond reflex, for planning in the face of uncertainty, for simulating dangers instead of falling victim to them, for organizing action in a world that changes faster than instinct can adapt. The mind isn't an accident of evolution. It is the first virtual reality system ever built, and the only one where the cost of failure was life itself. What does mind do? We often assume the mind is just for thinking, but thinking is only a small part of what it actually does. At its core, the mind is a model-building system. It transforms raw input, light, sound, heat, texture, into meaningful experience. You don't see photons, you see objects. You don't hear vibrations, you hear voices, music, context. The mind turns sensation into story. But that's just the surface. The mind doesn't only process the present. It navigates through time. It recalls past events, some clearly, others through distortion. It also projects possible futures, running internal rehearsals long before any action begins. Psychologists call this mental time travel. It allows us to predict, imagine, and plan. Then there's abstraction. The mind can take one specific experience, someone lying to you, and generalize it into a broader rule. People can be untrustworthy. From patterns, we build beliefs. From beliefs, expectations. The mind constructs frameworks to interpret the world, not just record it. It also tracks the self. Despite change, the mind maintains a sense of identity. It remembers your name, your goals, your preferences, your history. Even when everything around you changes, there's a thread of continuity holding the you together. That thread is maintained by the mind. Socially, the mind is an interpreter. It reads tone, posture, body language. It models what others are thinking. This is known as theory of mind, our ability to simulate other minds. Without it, trust, empathy, and society wouldn't exist. Then there's creativity. The mind doesn't just reflect the world, it reconfigures it. It takes fragments of experience and combines them into things that have never existed. Art, metaphors, inventions, stories. And when belief and reality conflict, the mind protects itself. This is cognitive dissonance. It bends perception to preserve coherence. Even when it distorts, it's trying to maintain stability. So, what does the mind do? It senses, it remembers, it predicts, it decides, it imagines, it connects. It models the world and your place in it. It doesn't just process life, it builds the experience of living it. That's what the mind does, not just to survive, but to turn information into meaning. How does mind create thoughts? You think remember, imagine, decide. But all of it begins in silence, inside a 1.3 kilogram organ wrapped in folds of living tissue. At the center of it all are neurons, roughly 86 billion of them. Each neuron connects to thousands of others, forming trillions of possible pathways. Alone, they're silent, but together, they fire in patterns that give rise to everything from speech to memory to fear. A thought begins as a pattern of electrical activity. One neuron fires, then another, and the cascade spreads. Signals can travel up to 250 miles per hour, but it's not just about speed, it's about structure. The brain organizes itself into specialized circuits, some for vision, some for language, some for attention or emotion. Between these neurons are microscopic gaps called synapses. When one neuron fires, it releases neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that cross the gap and influence the next neuron. Some excite, some inhibit. The timing and intensity of these signals form the language of thought. But thoughts aren't isolated events. They're built on integration. Different regions of the brain work in constant communication. The prefrontal cortex analyzes, the hippocampus recalls, the limbic system colors it with emotion. And when they synchronize, thought emerges, like musicians in an orchestra playing a single score. Even more remarkable, this system is self-organizing. Neurons that fire together tend to wire together. That means learning, memory, and even imagination reshape the brain. New thoughts leave physical traces. Experiences literally change your wiring. Your thoughts also have rhythm. Brain waves, slow in sleep, fast in focus, coordinate different regions. These rhythms help keep the brain's activity aligned, like keeping time in a symphony. And yet, for all we know about the mechanics, one mystery remains. How do these signals become meaning? We know the pathway. A signal fires in your motor cortex, your hand moves. Another loop activates, and you recall a memory. But what turns these biological events into conscious experience? That's the part we don't fully understand. The leap from physical signal to felt thought is still unexplained. It's where neuroscience meets philosophy. So how does the brain create thought? Through neurons and synapses, through circuits and rhythms, through chemistry, electricity, and plasticity, but also through something we don't fully grasp. Maybe thought is what happens when a biological system becomes complex enough to simulate the world and itself. And maybe the next frontier isn't just mapping the brain, it's learning to listen to its patterns and recognizing ourselves inside them.